Hello, everybody. We are about to start this session. Good morning, good afternoon. We have a session here which is called Speeding Up Sustainable Soy. And we have in this session two excellent experts, one from the Netherlands, which is Helene van der Homburg from IUCN Netherlands Committee. And the second expert is Ulises Martinez from Fundación Vida Silvestre. And I would like to welcome them both. Can we please see them for a moment? I would like to welcome and introduce them to the public. Yeah, there they will come. So Helene is an expert in agro-commodities, both soy and palm oil, working on sustainable streams. And I would like now to give Helene the chance to shortly introduce herself. Helene, please go ahead.
Hi,
welcome.
Thanks, Sander, for introducing me. I indeed work for the IUCN National Committee of the Netherlands as an advisor, working closely also with NGOs in producing countries such as Argentina, and happy to work with Ulises today, and advising government, NGOs, financial institutions, and other companies on next steps to take on sustainable soy. I'll go into that. It's a complex measure, a complex, let's say, discussion that we're in. Thank you.
Thank you, Helene, and great that you can join us. And Ulises Martinez, please, very welcome as well here to Marseille. Great that you can make it online. Yes, could you please introduce yourself shortly?
Thanks, Sander. Ulises Martinez. I am a teacher and researcher of Buenos Aires University, the Agronomy School, and also working with Fundación Vida Silvestre, which is the local partner of WWF. I'm very pleased to share with you this experience at this Congress. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you also for joining. And yeah, I would like to explain to everybody that this session will be about sustainable soy. We will look into the possibilities, how to make it even more sustainable, more transparent. Also look at the agroecology aspect of sustainable soy production. What are possibilities and what are still challenges? There are two possibilities during this session to ask questions. Both in the room and on the YouTube channel. Please log into your Gmail account, and then on YouTube you can ask your questions, and I will convey the question to the speakers, so to say. So I would like to first ask Helene to start with the introduction of her presentation. Next slide, please. Helene, you're on mute.
Hi.
Yes.
The title is Speeding Up Sustainable Soy by Cooperation and Legislation. And of course, we don't know who you are listening in. It may be that you have very different levels of being informed about this issue, and I will probably jump to very basics to quite some complex things that we're struggling with. So forgive me for that. I'm trying to have a bit for everybody to catch into this discussion. First of all, as Europeans, and I'm working at the European level as well as in the Netherlands, we eat a lot of soy without knowing it sometimes. It's quite a hidden ingredient. So we eat a lot of soy, not so much because we're vegetarians, eating soy drinks and tempeh and tofu, but because we eat a lot of animal protein. So maybe we can go into the Hidden Soy website indicated. Can you please click the link? Can you please click the link on the...
Yes, we will change screens. One moment, please. Continue your story, Helene.
Okay, well, there you'll see that, okay, we're seeing it now. Please enter the fridge. We eat 61 kilos of soy per year because of our animal protein consumption. And you can scroll indeed a little bit over the pork and the cheese and the salmon just to have an idea what you'll find if you go to this website. It's already a quite some years old, but it's still a nice way of getting to know what soy means in our daily diets. So if you scroll a little bit up, yeah, don't scroll now. I'll say something about it. For example, pork meat. For 100 grams of pork, 51 grams of soy have been used as feed. For cheese, 100 grams of cheese, 25 grams have been used as soy. For salmon, even more. It's 59 grams for 100 grams of salmon steak. And then for chicken, on the lower part, chicken wings, it says, or chicken breast, 109 grams of soy for 100 grams of chicken meat. So thanks for closing this and going back to the slide.
Yes, continue your story, Helene. Thank you.
I will. So it means, yeah, on a global scale, about 70% or 75% is used for animal feed, but in Europe, it's even higher. It's about 90% of what we import and use is used for feed. Next slide, please. Keeping track of what we consume and in how far this is produced according to responsible criteria and conversion-free or deforestation-free criteria, we've started the European Soy Monitor together with IDH in 2019. So it monitors the use, but also the coverage with sustainability standards over the period of 2017 to 2019 so far. And maybe you can also click the link, and if that's too complicated, yeah, please go. Here's the European Soy Monitor, also to be found online, all the versions. Please scroll down to the third page. Here you see an image of what we consume generally worldwide, more than 300 million metric tons, and in Europe, and also per country. So what do we consume domestically? And then you see a figure on the left side, and that says, well, what of it is controlled somehow by standards that the feed has acknowledged as, you know, a basic level of responsibility or not illegal, that it controls on legality of production, for example. And the white figure with each country says what of it is certified or deforestation free, often also conversion free. So you see that Norway is doing fine in that sense, and Sweden and the Netherlands and Belgium with quite high percentages of coverage with conversion-free standards. And other countries still have a longer way to go on that journey, such as here, Italy, Spain, or Portugal, which are actually quite huge consumers with 4.5 million tons, or 1 million tons for Portugal, and Poland as well, more than 1 million metric tons, but not advanced yet on this road. Of course, there are multiple routes to Rome, but we've said, you know, there are standards out there that are indicating what responsible production is, now also combined with deforestation-free criterion. Why not use them? We may come back to this this picture if it is of interest to you, but I just wanted to show that, you know, we monitor this way what is being done, and that we're quite important users. Overall, 25% is certified conversion free. Please go back to the slide. And while you do so, next slide. Yes, here we are again. And the next slide. So why is this important? You know, I wanted to start with the European picture, acknowledging that we're important users. After China, I must say, China is the biggest user, about you could say 3 times as much as we use, 2 to 3 times as much. But one of the major issues, and probably known to you, is deforestation and ecosystem conversion. You've all seen images from the Amazon, and not all of you may know that there is a moratorium actually on soy expansion in the Amazon. But there's also another biome there, very important for biodiversity, that is being threatened by conversion, and that is the Cerrado. It has had also some spillover from the Amazon, and it's still under threat. And so that's why, for example, WWF is working hard to make change there, and companies have joined in that endeavor. Then in Argentina, the Gran Chaco, also a very important biome, biodiversity-wide, very huge biome, but also threatened by further conversion. It knows 500,000 of hectares of conversion per year for cattle and soy and other production. Argentina will be the example today. Ulysses will go into that with facts, figures, and ideas. Paraguay, also a producing country of soy, merely in the Atlantic forest region, but maybe in the near future, also the Gran Chaco may be entered, now mainly subject to cattle production. Bolivia, also the Gran Chaco and other biomes are let's say, converted for soy, and in the USA, not so much the forest, but prairie areas are still under conversion. This is important figure, and we've also published about the areas of conversion that can still happen of forest in the main producing areas. Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay together, still 110 million hectares can be legally converted. So that's about the same amount we have out there, and not even including the other biome, the other ecosystems outside the forest. So that means that conversion-free production, deforestation-free production is important from a climate and biodiversity point of view, even if not simple to achieve. Other issues: land grab, land rights, unsustainable chemicals use, both in GM and in non-GM soy, labor rights on the plantations, and the community relations. So these are still issues that are still also very relevant within a responsible production to tackle. There is quite an interaction with cattle raising in Latin America, between soy and cattle raising. Sometimes cattle start and then soy takes over. This is just to mention it. Maybe Ulysses will come back to that. Next slide, please. So in response to problems happening, roundtables have been started. The Roundtable for Responsible Soy, for example, and other robust standards that outline what responsible production actually could mean at farm level. That means applying quality criteria, environmental and social ones, but also having a good level of assurance, including the quality and frequency of control. A good standard has both of this, good criteria and good control. And we did a benchmark, a comparison between soy standards that are allowed or at least found sufficient by the European feed sector. Next slide, please. The European feed sector united in the FEFAC. They defined standards that are at least controlling illegality and some other factors. And we looked at the green criteria within these standards, and also the control criteria. So you see vertically the green criteria and the control criteria on the other axis. Then upper right, RTRS came out, let's say, best in class. If you combine the two, the criteria and the control, that is required. So that's maybe interesting to see, and I recommend for the ones interested to read the publication. Next slide, please. So the Netherlands has a long time ago, I think 10 years ago, yes, exactly 10 years ago, it decided to go for 100% RTRS, both in the domestic use and also the processing that we do, for example, in our dairy products or other and meat products. So especially dairy has done a lot to achieve that, both for the domestic consumption and the export. And others have followed suit, but we've always said, you know, how about the rest of Europe? And how about the rest of, we should move together to be able to achieve more and to move beyond a book and claim system of buying certificates. And how can we also achieve more impact with what we do? Not just covering our own use, but having better impact in landscapes at risk, such as the mentioned Gran Chaco or Cerrado. So what measures are needed here and at EU level and globally? And how can we collaborate better? I'm deeply involved in that. I will come back to that later today. If you're listening in now or later viewing the video, especially for European IUCN members, I'd like to join hands to see what we can do together. So I will come back to that search in the second part. Next slide, please. Here's Ulysses' turn.
Ulysses, yeah, welcome. Ulysses Martinez now will speak about the relation between the Gran Chaco and soy. Ulysses, please go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, Helen Chaco. Next, please. Well, let's introduce to you the Gran Chaco region. It's a very large region, more than 1 million square kilometers.
Ulysses, excuse me, can you speak a little bit louder?
Yeah. As saying, 1 million square kilometers spread among 3 countries, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Argentina, a little part of Brazil also, and goes from tropical climates to subtropicals, and also from very wet conditions in the east to arid and semi-arid condition in the west. So this gives the region a very wide diversity of ecosystems, not only mostly forest, but also large wetlands and swamps, and large, very big rivers, grasslands and savannas. A large biodiversity with more than 3,000 species of plants, 500 species of birds, and more than 150 species of mammals. Also, a diversity of communities, indigenous communities, criollos, and Fisan communities. It's a very poor region, so these communities are very often vulnerable and abuse on their rights, especially their land rights and the land tenure. And of course, the problem we already mentioned, deforestation and conversion. Unfortunately, we have the second highest deforestation rate in the world after the Cerrado in Brazil. But unfortunately, again, the Gran Chaco region is not as known as the Amazon. The concerns are very often also in the Amazon and the Cerrado and Brazilian situation. And the Gran Chaco has been invisibilized, kind of, right? Next, please. And we said this deforestation and conversion problem in the Chaco is related to soy, is related to beef also as the main drivers, beef and soy. Beef production in Argentina is mostly for domestic consumption. We export only 20 to 15% of our beef production to Europe, to China, and to other countries. But also soy is a big driver together with beef, because as Helen mentioned, they are both combined in the same farmer, in the same farm, together with corn production also. We will explain later about that. But the important thing is that in the case of soy, we export almost all the production. Almost 90, 85, 90% of the Argentinian soy production is exported, mainly to Europe. First destination of our soy is Europe, mainly in the form of soy meal. In fact, European imports of soy meal are very dependent on Argentinian soy meal, together with Brazilian origin. So there is a strong link between soy exports from Argentina to Europe, right? And an important part, 20 to 7% of the soy production, and also the soy coming from Argentina to Europe, came from Chaco region. Yes, 7% is the latest data we have, but used to be 20% or more a couple of years ago. And that is very variable among years. It depends on climate at south, climate at the north, and also price relation. Not only the soy price, but also corn price and beef price. So this proportion of soy coming from Chaco region to Europe may increase again if conditions change. Next, please. And deforestation, again, we lost more than 6 million hectares in the last 30 years. That is about 32 football fields per hour. So that means that at the end of this session we are talking here, we will lose more than 45 football fields of forests in our Chaco region. And together with those forests, we lost also biodiversity. Many species threatened, especially the jaguar. There are only 20 jaguars remaining in Chaco region in Argentina. Very endangered. Also, other species, flag species like the anteater, the giant anteater, endemic species only found in Chaco region, like all the armadillos. Chaco region is an endemic region for armadillos that they are not found in any other place in the world, especially the giant armadillo, also very threatened. Maned wolf, many species endangered in this region. Also for carbon sink is very important. Our deforestation, our emissions of greenhouses is also very affected for deforestation. 15% of our emissions are coming from deforestation. And also we are already experiencing problems of water table rising, generating salinization of soil. Very big problem for production, future production, because salinizated soils are unproductive. And next, please. This is how deforestation looks. This is also, in fact, an evolution of deforestation. The deforestation starts like this. I don't know if you can see my arrow here. They start with these strips for machineries, and then they push the forest, clear these strips here, and then they burn these strips of residues, forest residues, and finally it looks like the fields at the bottom, at the end of the picture. You can see here they doesn't respect streams, rivers, here wetlands, they use all. And we have a forest protection law in Argentina since 2007, but still after that forest protection law, we lost more than 3 million hectares. That is 10% of our Chaco forest. It's a lot. It's 1% a year we lost. You see a global mean for deforestation rates are less than 0.3%. And we are losing Chaco forest at more than 1% in the last 10 years. And this was made even having a national forest protection law, and half of that deforestation, more than 1.5 million hectares, was made illegally. Next, please. The forest protection law categorizes our forests in 3 categories. Red are the high conservation value forests and is for conservation. Yellow category is medium conservation value and is for sustainable use of forests, meaning that you can't clear those forests, but you can use it for timber, for tourism, and also for cattle raising in a silvopastoral way. We will come back to that later. And then we have the green category that could be deforested, could be cleared legally. But then we have uncategorized forests. That means that some provinces doesn't consider some areas as forest lands, even when they was considered as forest land according to FAO definitions, according to national forest maps. But some provinces took their own classification and doesn't consider a large surface of forest that keep without the forest law protection. So legally, there are still 18 million hectares of forest that could be cleared legally, right? When I mentioned before that 50% of deforestation has been illegal, that means that was made on red or yellow category. That means that we lost mostly high value forest. High value forests are subject of deforestation according to forest protection law. The other mechanism, a very important mechanism that this forest law established is a compensation for environmental services, for ecological services, with a fund established by this law, but unfortunately also very weakly enforced. This fund only reached less than 3% of our forests. But it's a good opportunity to promote sustainable use of forests, including these silvopastoral or agro-silvopastoral uses, as we will mention later. Next, please. And we made an assessment together with INTA, which is the National Institution for Agricultural Research, searching for these scenarios up to 2028. The four scenarios are in red, we have business as usual, and in green, these other three. AL means legal enforcement, meaning the complete enforcement of the forest protection law. N and D means no deforestation, and N and C means no conversion, assuming a large adoption of corporate commitments on no deforestation or no conversion. That would go beyond legal enforcement in Argentina, beyond legal protection in the forest law. I mentioned our legislation allows the conversion of 18 million hectares. That's why it's very important that companies commit we, beyond that legal enforcement, commit with no deforestation or no conversion and protect all the ecosystems. And the results are that under every of these scenario, we could reach the same production. You see in yellow and brown bars up in the graph, we can increase in every scenario, even in no conversion or no deforestation scenario, we still can increase our production of beef, 1.7 million hectares plus, and the production of agriculture, 2.3 million hectares of increase in the next 10 years. Even in the more restrictive condition or the more environmental soundly conditions. But reducing the impacts, of course, in the business as usual, we lost in the next 8 years, 4 million hectares, which we can reduce at a half if we reach fully enforcement of the forest law, and even more if we increase the adoption of no conversion or no deforestation. You see that in the gray bars at the bottom. Next, please. And then we traduce those figures into impacts. Impacts on soil quality, for example. You see on the gray bars.
Which gray bars, Ulysses?
Yes, gray bars here.
Mm-hmm. Now we don't see your mouse. Sorry.
Do you see?
No, we don't see your mouse.
In the upper graph,
yes,
you see gray bars.
Yes,
6.8 million tons of erosion, soil erosion in the business as usual, and 80,000 tons of carbon loss from soil. Beyond the carbon loss from deforestation, also we lose carbon from soil. And those gray bars, you see how can we reduce adopting the other scenario, legal enforcement and corporate commitments. In the yellow bars, you see greenhouse gases emission from deforestation can also be reduced in the other scenario related, compared with business as usual. And very interesting, in the green graph at the bottom, you see fragmentation or habitat quality measured by fragmentation and measured by the size of the fragments, the size of the remaining fragments that can be adopting this other scenario, legal enforcement, but more effective with no deforestation and no conversion commitments. We can increase the size of the fragments remaining and also the connectivity of these fragments remaining. And that's are very important for biodiversity. That are very important for biodiversity, as I said. Next, please. And lastly, we can talk about all this later. We have a space for questions and a dialogue, but some initiatives that are in place in Argentina that could be a starting point. Compromiso Gran Chaco, the Gran Chaco Commitment for 2030. It's a call to action for governments, for companies, and also for civil society. And we collect supporters, more than 1,000 supporters, individual supporters, and more than 100 institutional supporters to this compromiso, to this commitment. Very important is to, as I said, increase Gran Chaco visibility increase the interest of companies and governments about Gran Chaco and our situation. Then we have a business platform, actually a multi-stakeholder platform, in which all traders, all soy traders operating in Argentina start to commit or to discuss about no deforestation commitments on their business. This is very initial, at the initial stage in Argentina. You see there are around 14 companies that concentrate 90% of the soy trading in Argentina. Of those 12 companies, only 3 have commitments of no deforestation, public commitments of no deforestation in Chaco region. Other companies have it for the Amazon or for the Cerrado, but not for Chaco. And only 7 companies have started to collect information and data about the origin of the soy they trade. They don't even know where their soy are coming from. So they need to know, they need to, even those companies that have those commitments, they actually have small information about the origin of the soy they trade. And then the other initiative that we would like to share some issues is about certification. Helen mentioned about the importance of certification as a mechanism to promote good agricultural practices, good agriculture in terms of biodiversity, but also social impacts, community relation with communities, labor rights, very important in Argentina, labor rights. And it is increasing in Argentina, the adoption of this kind of certification. We mentioned here RTRS, but there are others. It's still small, less than 2% of Argentinian production is under this, but it could increase very much if there is the right market signal. Because one thing we are facing now is that there are many farmers that has a stock of credits, in this case, credits of responsible soil production that they can't sell. They cannot sell because they haven't demand for that. So for one side, we are very concerned about the effects of our soy consumption affects the world, but then we don't have the right market signal to support those farmers that are making good, right? They need that, and they are waiting for those signals for increase the surface, the adoption of this best quality standard. I am about to travel to the region next week, next 10 days from now, especially for that, for talk with those farmers that are expecting for good signals from the market regarding those credits that they are in stock, they have in stock, to increase and to incorporate new farms with those good agricultural practices. I will leave here, and maybe we can go deep in some of the details from your questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Ulysses Martinez, for your presentation from Argentina, an expert on RTRS, on soy, what is happening with the communities in Argentina, trying to look at these different aspects. So now I would like to invite, are there any questions from the public regarding the situation in Argentina, regarding the flow of soy towards the EU market. You are welcome to post those questions now. I have a couple actually from this presentation, but I'd first like to invite the public. Yes?
Hello.
Please state your name and your organization and to who you want to ask the question.
Hello, my name is Barbara Risi. I am a teacher of the Free University Amsterdam, but I'm also a Brazilian teacher from UNILA, Universidad Federal de la Integración Latinoamericana, based in the Iguaçu Falls, in the triple border of Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina. As an anthropologist, I didn't research there, but as an anthropologist, I was asked by the indigenous people to visit several of those communities. So I've been in Guarani communities, both Paraguay and Argentina sides, and I've seen, for me, striking comparison to the place where I did my fieldwork, that's the Javari Valley in the Amazon. So I gone from this paradise where indigenous people live still in the most pristine forest in that area to those places where I have even a picture in my computer I can show for the record, how they live under plastic between the soya plantation and the roads. That's the situation of indigenous Guarani, one of the biggest indigenous population. So my question is, if now with government in Argentina that is more progressive than the one that we have in Brazil, does it make a difference, or if it remains being the same for indigenous populations, the soya production is going to keep on being invested, even with the president of Argentina being a leftist, we would say. In Brazil, it grew with Dilma, the deforestation and the pressure on indigenous territories. So I would like to hear what you have to say about the situation in Argentina, and what do you expect if it will help also in the soya to become sustainable, and if we can avoid the destruction that is going on.
Thank you for this question. Ulysses, could you respond to that question at the level of Argentinian Chaco?
Yes, thanks for that question and for the picture. Yes, yes, the situation is very similar. Indigenous communities, as I said, Gran Chaco in Argentina has a lot of indigenous communities, many kind of ethnic groups, and also peasant communities that manage community lands. Most of them have weak land titles, right? They have customary rights for their lands, but these are very often affected by this soy expansion and beef expansion, agribusiness expansion, in fact, generating evictions and abuse over their land tenure rights. That's the most important thing. There are very low data about it, but the latest data are from 2012, and they measure about 1.6 million hectares subject of these land right conflicts in the Chaco. 1.6 million hectares affected to that land rights conflicts. And then the other issue you mentioned, contamination by spraying. There's also a very urgent issue there. Contamination by spraying, not only by air spraying, but also land spraying, let's say, affecting communities, affecting schools, affecting water sources, and also generating very bad problems, health problems, very serious health problems like cancer, of course, and birth malformations. I don't know if it's the right word, but very badly impacts in that sense too.
Thank you, Ulysses. So does this answer your question? Not fully, in the sense that what do you expect from the current political situation and whether that will improve the rights and the land rights of the indigenous people in the Chaco? That maybe you could reflect shortly on that still.
Well, from my view, the political situation, it doesn't change so much in terms of the agribusiness expansion. I mean, government policies have changed in the last 2 years. I mean, it changed, government change, but the need of Argentinian economy for agribusiness exports is the same. So export policy or production policy, it remains. So the impulse of or the trends on agribusiness expansion doesn't change. It
okay.
will continue.
Yeah, thank you. So that basically it doesn't matter which political force is there. So are there any other questions from the public? Yes, please. Please state your name and your organization. Thank you.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
Clearly.
So I'm Mikako, and I was in WWF, and I have been in charge of the soy issue. So I may have seen you, Ulysses, probably several years ago. So my question is rather to Helen, because in your presentation, you mentioned about the Euro soy monitor by IDH. And in that graph, well, you emphasized Italy and Spain, but also I would like to a little bit focus on France itself, because yesterday there was a session about the so-called Amsterdam Declaration. And of course, France is a leading company of Amsterdam Declaration, but still, France does not reach so-called 100% RTRS or 100% certified soy or sustainable soy. In your view, what is the barrier for these countries who already mentioned that they tackle deforestation and introduce a very strong policy measures, but still in a market, it doesn't reach to that stage. So what's the real issue, or what's the main cause for it in your view?
Thank you. Very interesting question. Helene, please, could you respond?
Yeah, very interesting question indeed. France also indeed has its ambitions within the Amsterdam Declaration partnership expressed to have deforestation-free commodities, not only soy, but also palm oil and others. So there is ambition. There is also retail, let's say, intentions of doing that within a particular time frame. So I think these are important steps. Knowing also that the routes can differ between countries. As the Netherlands, we've been supporter of RTRS for a long time, and I think we should build on that. And other countries can start with asking conversion-free soy, building in such certifications of such robust integrated criteria into that ask. I don't know if I make myself clear, but I guess to you as a specialist, I hope I make myself clear that you can enter through different routes. To try to have the suppliers that you work with fully deforestation free, fully conversion free, and then add sustainability criteria to that to be also responsible. Or you can start with responsible like we did in the Netherlands and add the full supply chain on conversion free. So I think in Europe, the routes may differ a little bit. We talk about that also among the national soy initiatives, but we hope to have, let's say, a collective move towards responsible and conversion free soy. Now you asked me about the obstacles. Cost is a very important obstacle. Fear for cost is a very important obstacle. Sometimes it's not even the cost, the real cost, but the fear for the cost. You know, soy is a very big, high volume, low margin product. And any cost that is added is sometimes provoking resistance, I must say. So we really need to join hands to make the move towards a better production conditions, especially in the Gran Chaco at this moment also. Thank you.
Thank you, Helene. Does this answer your question well? Thank you. I have another question from the public.
Hello, my name is Julian Rode from the Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research. I heard that, of course, one aspect of sustainable soy is no conversion, no deforestation, very critical. But then once land is converted, has been converted, what are the main things that need to change on the production system on the land to make it more sustainable? And are there viable business models for soy that is sustainably produced and can compete somewhat with those that are not sustainable? Thank you.
I think this is a bridge, Sander, to the next topic.
Yes, a good bridge indeed. I will give Ulysses a very short response, but then we'll go back to the presentation, because indeed the next part of this session will go into exactly that question. But Ulysses, maybe you can very quickly respond whether this is possible. So whether we see that there are, of course, already a lot of soy farms, and are there improvements to be made there also? Is that possible, or would you like to go to the presentation?
No, very shortly, yes, there are possibilities to increase sustainability or responsibility in soy production, good agricultural practices, especially on chemical management, agrochemical management, and also on soil conservation by labor practices, but also by rotation and combination between agriculture and beef production. I would say that are the main issues to incorporate in soy production.
Okay, thank you, Ulysses. Then there is another round for questions at the end, but now we would like to make a next step, because we have talked about certification, but we also would like to, what are engines at the level of collaboration, but also at the level of legislation? We know that free initiatives are good, but we also need that legislation. So I would like to ask to start the PowerPoint again. Then Helene, maybe you can continue here. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll first go indeed into that, and then also go build further on what agroecology would mean for soy production. And I think that the question just asked is also very relevant for that part. Well, France, the Netherlands, UK, Denmark, etc., but also, you know, and not only among European countries, but also with other regions and producing regions, not in the last place. We need to cooperate further to make this bulk chain move towards in the right direction. There is a strong call for conversion-free soy by NGOs. Strong and increasing call. I have explained why, because of the figures, and that has resulted over the years in a legislative process at the EU level to achieve deforestation-free products, including soy, and combined, hopefully, also with human rights due diligence requirements. That is being developed right now. And there's a lot of, let's say, expectation for this to play an important role to strengthen or, you know, at least scale up the efforts that voluntary initiatives have been able to do, because that is not going fast enough to combat ecosystem conversion. And I've been closely following this. I know it is important, but it will also not be a silver bullet, because designing legislation at the EU level is very complicated. And the design is also incredibly important to be effective. So I'm quite sure that voluntary initiatives and the cooperation between them and a level playing field by legislation will both have to play a role in Europe and beyond. The clean supplier approach in that is important, that in your supply chains and in the supply chains of those suppliers, and I'm thinking of traders particularly, illegality is taken out and conversion and deforestation are let's say, combated. So that's an upcoming, let's say, call from NGOs, and we're searching how to match this with the, other type of criteria as well in responsible soy sourcing in the Netherlands and Europe. Next. So I'm also involved independently from IUCN in the collaborative Soy Initiative, where we inform and create synergy among initiatives. Also taking part is the Secretariat of the Amsterdam Declaration Partnership, and also European Soy Initiatives, multi-stakeholder platforms from Netherlands, UK, Denmark, France, Sweden, Norway, Germany, and Austria. So we're just started, you could say, and we're exchanging information. We try to strengthen each other's efforts towards conversion-free soy. Next, please. Then taking the example of France or the Netherlands, what could be the role of robust standards like RTRS or Proterra or like-minded in the mix? There could be examples for criteria setting in company-wide policies, also financial institutions, or for the government policies of the EU or the member states, such as France or the Netherlands. And the others. And they can also be, let's say, inspiration for landscape programs, such as happening in the Cerrado and Chaco, of what responsible production would mean, not only at the farm level, but also beyond. And then they could be tools in the toolbox of verification of criteria for conversion-free and responsible soy, and proofs of good conduct. But we also need to, to have scale, to make scale. And so we need different measures to have a scale in conversion-free responsible soy and have positive impact in risk landscapes such as the Argentina Chaco. Next, please. Shall I go on, Sander, because of time? I think so.
Yes. Are there, just checking, is there a question with regard to the EU legislation? I would like to ask you one question, Helene.
Okay.
Because you're saying the EU legislation is not the silver bullet, but it can cover a large ground. So could you shortly elaborate why, what should at least be in there, and what is sort of what we need in that mix, just to, before we go into this next topic?
Yeah. Well, we've been arguing for minimum criteria or environment and social minimum criteria to be adopted in this legislation, to include conversion, to include responsible production criteria, and also to, not only focus on certain commodities, but have that as a general policy. Because what you also don't want to see is that it switches between commodities and you have the same conversion. So due diligence criteria, meaning, having your processes in order, avoiding mitigating and addressing risk in your value chain, and applying good criteria such as the ones of responsible soy. That's it will be just a part of that. What will come out of this legislation?
Okay.
I'm sure.
And the reason that it's not a silver bullet?
Because it does not address all those aspects. It does not address, maybe does not address financial institutions. I hope that still can be part of the mix. It does not address all conversion. I also still hope that can be part of the mix. And there is an incredible important role for the coherence between different files, the due diligence legislation, the forest risk commodities legislation, the sustainable finance legislation. Those are three of the files that really should work together to make an impact. So I'm quite sure we need voluntary initiatives to make it all to make the wheel work
and to make it consistent. Okay, thank you. Yeah, then let's continue to the next part, the agroecological part. Thank you.
Yeah, and I realize that we have a lot of topics that we just touch upon, so I hope we can further dialogue about it. Ulysses and I, with Jinke van Dam, were involved in the writing of this publication, Soy and Agroecology, building a bridge to the mainstream market, because of course that's a challenge. There are different worlds, the world of agroecology and the world of the mainstream. So what does agroecology mean? There are different definitions there, but we say practically it integrates ecological principles and biodiversity management into farming systems, hoping to increase the multifunctionality of these systems and the total farm productivity of these systems, while reducing dependency on external inputs and sustaining or enhancing ecosystem services. For more information about the definition, I refer to the publication. But next slide, please.
And Helene, the publication can be found on the session website, right?
Yes, indeed. But you can also Google IUCN NL building a bridge, soy mainstream market, those words, and you'll get it.
Okay. Yeah.
So the benefits include, sorry for all the words here on the slide, to improve biodiversity, enhancing and conserving species and genetic diversity, and improving ecological processes to sustain this. And also, if done well and with a landscape view, support ecological connectivity in the landscape to reduce habitat fragmentation. That's an element that we would like to add to an agroecological approach because landscape view on that is important. Then to reduce harm from agrochemicals, because it would rely less on external inputs and the overuse of them that cause harm to biodiversity, soil, water, and air. To improve climate smart practices and increase resource efficiency, for example, less fossil energy use, better carbon storage in the soil, but also from a system perspective, you could look at shorter chains, for example, agroecological soy for human consumption, rather than all of this for feed. Then reduce the vulnerability and improve socioeconomic resilience through diversification of crops and land use. And so, for example, against pest outbreaks, that makes more resilient, and also less vulnerable for prices, for example, that may change. Thank you. Next one. So, of course, we can't go into this in detail today, but this is the picture that we made built on the literature about potential agroecological practices. And I'm inviting you to go into the publication and look at them. Just to mention a few: crop diversity, integrated crop livestock forestry systems, crop rotation, very important for soy as well, conserving high conservation value areas, seedbed preparation, robust varieties, non-GM in this case, but also mixed or combined with less chemical use for your understanding and information, and other types of the dealing with the soil, such as conservation tillage, no-till, also important in soy, and better nutrient management, integrated pest management, and non-chemical weed management, also very important for soy. Next one, please. So in this, is mainstream soy an alien or an ally? It's an alien in the sense that it's often very large scale, industrially managed elements in the landscapes, or even converted whole landscapes to this. It's a driver of conversion, and often also GM technology has been seen as an alien issue. It's out there at scale. So if we deal with conversion, we have to deal with this. But they're heavy chemical use both in non-GM and GM production. It's an ally because we already talked about standards that want to establish responsible soy, conversion-free, responsible soy. So can we add a clean suppliers approach to that, making it broader, more broadly applicable? And then should it be conversion-free only, or should it also include agroecological principles? I think it should also do the latter. And standards such as RTRS and Proterra and Dona Soya already provide criteria. Could we add and could we build on that to further go into the agroecological production? They already do that, but we could deepen that. So mentioned no-till, natural pest control, integrated pest management, and crop rotations being very important for soy. I give the floor to Ulysses to go into an example from Argentina. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Just, I thought I was finished. 5 pages of recommendations within our publication for producers and many other certification standards, buyers, governments, financial institutions, knowledge institutions, and NGOs. So if you Google soy and agroecology, IUCN NL, you'll find the publication.
Thank you, Helene. Ulysses, yes, please.
Next slide.
Next slide. And
sí. Next again, please. Well, Helen mentioned some of the key concepts of agroecology are diversity, right? Biodiversity of the production system, and also the reduction of the dependency on external inputs or technological inputs, mainly intensive fossil fuels inputs like fuel or chemicals, fertilizers, etc., seeds. So you can see at the left the industrial way of production, in the bottom agriculture, which is very monocultures, right? In each plot you have a single species, mostly the same genes, and you put a lot of inputs to assure that you have only that only species, right? And on the left and up, you have a pasture in the Chaco where they clear all the forest and leave only these 4 or 5 trees, only for shadow for the animals. And then you have a pasture again with a single species of high productivity. So you transform the ecosystem to have one single species that you can control, and you maintain that by a big amount of inputs, technological inputs. And one thing that have lost in Argentina in the last 20, 30 years is the combination between agriculture and beef production that used to balance this pressure to the environment. The pressure to the soil especially has been very well measured, how the pasture stage recover the soil quality, recover the soil fertility. Also, you can do also multi-specific pasture with not only one single species, because you have winter species and summer species. You have to have all the year cover with green leaf for cattle raising. I have to mention here that in Argentina and in all South America, beef production is made based on grazing, right? In fact, in Argentina, half of the beef production is made grazing on natural grassland. Yes, natural grassland, you don't even have to seed, don't even have to fertilize, nor nor pest control, or very little pest control. So beef production in Argentina is done in a kind of agroecological way, using natural grasslands in half of beef production. Very little of beef production in Argentina use grains, for example. It was estimated that only 1.5 kilos of corn is used to produce 1 kilo of beef, while in Europe and in other places is 10 times higher, this percentage. So coming back to this system that integrates agriculture with pastures, that recover soil condition, that use much less inputs than agriculture, it's a way to incorporate this aspect, right? Diversity in the field, diversity of products, but also diversity of species on the farm, and using the environmental services of nature services instead of using or replacing those services with inputs. And this is most important in Chaco region, because in Chaco region we can also integrate into agro and beef production the forest production. I mentioned we can also produce beef into the forest. We see this picture there where we have beef production under forest, conservating forest, conservating landscape in a very diverse, biodiverse productive system. You have there some pictures that farmers sent to us in the project we have with Aileen in Chaco, which I'm going to visit next week. Those farmers send us these kind of pictures. You have anteater there, the color anteater, but also giant anteater, armadillos again, mother wolf, different kind of cats, etc. There is a lot of biodiversity surrounding agricultural fields, because they actually integrate, or they can integrate, then they can improve the integration of these activities. Forests like timber, or forests for cattle raising, together with agriculture. I think that's a very big opportunity for incorporate this kind of production. In fact, the forest law I mentioned before consider this kind of use. We call here MBGI, which means forest management with livestock integrated. There is a kind of a system to produce in this way that is supported for the forest law by this fund, this compensation mechanism I mentioned before. So
Ulysses, due to the time, could you finalize your presentation in a couple of minutes?
Yes, actually I already finished. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Then we are completely in sync in that sense. Thank you. Yeah, very inspiring indeed, and the difference between monocultures and diverse areas. And what at least interests me is the fact that the question whether we can the agroecological make that into the mainstream. What kind of elements of that system, which was always seen as sort of idealistic, can we increase and include in the mainstream soy production? So I think I want to start with that question. Is there anybody from the public that would like to have a question on that? I have a question also from the YouTube listeners, which are also listening. Maybe I'll do that first and then I'll get back to the public. So one question I got from and that's I think one for Helene, but maybe it could be also from Ulysses. We have talked a lot about the European market. We have talked about EU legislation, about best practices. But this person asked, in case that producers will sell all its production to low standard markets such as China, what is your proposal to address this conflictive and dilemmatic situation? Helene, could you first respond and afterwards Ulysses?
Yes, a very important one. I think there's a combination of, let's say, working with full suppliers and all they do and wherever they sell. There are just a number of traders that dominate the market, well, some small ones and also big ones that, you know, deliver to very diverse markets. If they would, let's say, go for conversion free more broadly and also deliver to different markets, that would help. We need for that question also good landscape programs, like we try to establish in Argentina, and also there are good examples in the Cerrado of landscape programs where forest conservation, sustainable production, working towards legality of farmers that haven't gone on that road so far is needed. So you need to reach out to all producers and to all markets that way. So yes, it is important to have forerunners positions in markets as well, EU, but in the end, you want to achieve the full volume and the full landscapes. I hope this answers your question. That's the way to also involve China on this road.
Thank you, Helene. So what you're saying with regard to the traders is basically that once we go to, for example, zero conversion with certain traders, we should basically say we don't want any conversion related soy in your company, basically. That's the only way we want to work with you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for us, it's not the only way we want to work with you, because we're too small for that. But if as many actors would ask that together, then I think that would be a very strong signal from different countries, from different actors.
Yeah, and investors maybe as well into those huge traders. Ulysses, do you want to reflect on this question? The China market is always sort of hanging above our head in the sense that they have so far, and we hope, of course, to convince them towards higher standards, but how this is often an argument not to raise the bar too high. So how do you see that from the Argentinian perspective?
Well, of course, China is the second destination of our soy, and a big also increasing destination for our beef. And this participation is increasing, so it will be in the near future the main destination probably. But I wouldn't say that they are so behind these requirements. We have the sensation that they are lower requirement regarding sustainability, but they are following also the European policies. As in Europe, you have pioneers, front runners, countries raising the bar, and the other countries followers. I think in the same way, China is a follower in that sense, and they are adopting criteria. In fact, COFCO is one of the main traders in Argentina, and they are one of the traders that are having commitments and are improving their monitoring about their sourcing. So they are adopting also the sustainability requirements.
Oh, that's actually hopeful indeed, and to indeed include the Chinese traders in that discussion and also in these landscape projects. So I want to see, is there any question from the public regarding either the EU legislation, which Helene talked about, or regarding the integration of the agroecology way into the mainstream soy production? any question? I have some, but I first would like to give the floor to the public. Yes, you.
So, sorry, it's Barbara Rizzi from Free University Amsterdam again. 2 questions, then very short this time, I promise. First, yesterday there was a press conference here in the IUCN. The indigenous people from Koika, representing 315 indigenous organizations from the Amazon basin, have asked for Europe to simply stop buying products, and they have a motion for 80% of the Amazon should be protected until 2025. So I imagine that Chaco, and there might be this kind of claims made by other indigenous people. So I would like to hear you. Then they are saying to Europe, don't buy our products, it's full of indigenous blood. They said specifically for soy, meat and stuff. Second question is about the agroecology aspect. I find nice the utopia, and I would like it to happen in the future. But I also think there is a problem about land disputes, and it's a violent land dispute. And because we've been there, we know how hard, how violent it is. It's with guns, people being shot in those areas. So how would be possible if the land is considered in the hand of so few?
Thank you. So Ulysses, you want to respond to that outcry of indigenous peoples here at the Congress at Marseille regarding stop buying any products from South America?
Well, I mentioned this Gran Chaco, Compromiso Gran Chaco, the Gran Chaco commitment that was also developed with some indigenous communities in Chaco and was later supported by some indigenous communities or indigenous organizations in Chaco. And the ask there is stop deforestation, not stop buying our products. The ask is stop deforestation and make your value chain deforestation free, because the region depends also in agribusiness production, right? Of course, indigenous communities are not directly involved in that business, but the region development, in fact, depends on that agribusiness development. So of course, they have the right to ask this kind of boycott, but from my perspective and from many of the organizations' perspective in the region, the idea is to monitor and work in those risky regions to manage the deforestation risk or to avoid deforestation in your supply chain. In that way, you can increase production, increase employment, and have all the benefits of the development, but without environmental consequence and social consequence. You mentioned also, and it is very linked, deforestation with communities eviction and land rights abuse. So those both issues are very, very related. And the second part, was it?
I think that is already a good answer, Ulysses. Indeed, so you're basically saying there are some groups that say, okay, don't completely stop with buying our resources, but really focus on that deforestation, and I think also on the land rights, of course, that aspect. Helene, from the European perspective, how do you see that boycott?
Well, I'd like to follow Ulysses' answer, and that has to do with him being much closer to the field than I can be. So in these kind of matters, I'd like to really listen to, what happens in a region at the local scale. We would not easily promote a boycott. We do promote a reduction in use, in the sense that we promote the transition to a more sustainable diet in which animal and plant production have a better balance. Right now, we have about 40% plant-based protein, 60% animal-based. That could go to 50-50 and even beyond to 40 and 60. So reversing the balance. Not that that would directly help Ulysses causes and indigenous causes, but it would at least release some of the pressure globally, and looking at the future that we have less land to use with more people. I think plant-based diets have also a role to play next to making these trade chains and the landscapes more sustainable. Thanks.
Thank you, Helene and Ulysses. I think we have had a very rich session with various elements regarding soy. It has to do with, of course, the legislation at EU level. It has to do with the right certification, raising the bar at certification level. It has to do with integration of ecological criteria into soy practices, but also good landscape programs where land rights and all these aspects are integrated. There is a discussion regarding the finalization, basically, or how do we relate the social issues with soy. That is, there are different views on that, and that is welcome, and we should keep discussing those. Is there a final question from the public? If not, I would like to ask both Helene and Ulysses for a final statement regarding speeding up the way to more sustainable soy. Thank you, Helene.
I'd like to give the last word to Ulysses, and I'm using this opportunity. Let's combine the best of roots. Let's combine the values of different approaches and knowledges to make this work, to really work for conservation and social justice.
Thank you, Helene. And Ulysses, what are your final recommendations, your final point to the public here in Marseille?
Yes, thanks again. Very pleased to share this experience from Argentina with you. And the final reflection would be that there are a lot of opportunities to integrate different best agricultural practices, combining with forest or landscape management. But these opportunities need to be supported or need to be increased. And for that, there are different approach, legal approach and political policies are needed, but also the commitment of the value chain or of the private sector is also needed.
Thank you, Ulysses Martinez from Fundación Vida Silvestre Argentina. And thank you, Helene van der Homburg from IUCN Netherlands, expert agro-commodities. I would like to thank the public. This session has been recorded on YouTube. It can be seen again. Do you want to stay in touch with us? Please connect through the QR code on the back of the chairs. And you have seen the different reports that are in this presentation. So I would like to, if you have any question, please approach me after the session. Thank you for your attention, and have a nice day, everybody.
Have a nice day. Saludos.
Saludos.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Helene. And thank you, Ulysses.